Could you just tell us your first name?
Renee.
Could you tell us what your dreams were as a kid?
If I can remember,
If any.
what were my dreams? I wanted to grow up. I wanted to get married, and I wanted to have 4 kids. That was like my biggest thing that was always like going through my heart and my mind.
Why 4 kids?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe it's because that's how many my mom had and my grandma had. I don't know. That's a good question.
How was your childhood?
It was. There were some good things about it. You know, we were active, and then there was abuse. It was very difficult for me. I've always been very sensitive to people's emotions and their energies, and I remember a lot of sadness and a lot of good times too.
What was sad? What were the sad parts of your childhood? Or in general?
In general. Are we talking about like a certain age, or just like up until I left the house?
Or just like, what encapsulates that for you?
The sad moments?
Yeah, or the sadness.
The sadness. I never felt completely loved for who I was, and I never felt like I was enough. I didn't feel protected, and it was a big family, so there was a lot of deaths too. It was very, very sad, very empty in a way.
Could you tell us about your relationship with your dad and how that felt?
Yeah. All right, give me just a second. So, my dad was my soccer coach for a long time growing up, and there were some proud moments that he had of me. Now, these are just my memories, not his, and I don't want it to seem like I'm bad-mouthing my dad or my parents, just like, I guess, my perspective on how I felt and what I had and didn't have. But then there was like, it reached a point where like I didn't feel like I was enough for him. I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't performing enough.
How did you deal with that?
Eventually, I found drugs and alcohol, and that's how I almost like started, I guess, numbing the pain or trying to wash it away with that. And I couldn't understand like what was so wrong with me that I had this like huge rejection with my dad, with my parents in general.
How'd that feel in the moment? What was the initial, like, if you can remember that initial, like, damn, am I not enough for my dad? Or when you knew that there was an expectation that maybe is a lot to me? Or, like, do you remember those initial moments? And then going forward as to where then you thought, like, man, I need to do this or do that?
I think the only thing that I can remember is like going into my room and just like, like crying myself to sleep constantly, like thinking like, what the fuck am I here for? Like I was like so hard on myself. Like, I don't understand why my dad doesn't love me. I don't understand why my mom doesn't love me. And so I was like, it almost like I like drowned myself in this like sorrow of like, I just wanted my dad to hold me and to be proud of me, and in a way, I guess, that I could understand.
How do you understand love now?
There's like so many aspects to it. It's like there's love as a feeling, there's love as making decisions for myself to protect myself. Love is like working on if something comes up and I feel the need to forgive, or figuring out how to love myself completely so I can let down some walls, and it's changing my points of view to, I mean, when I hear of like unconditional love or just like this feeling of love, it just like feels so free, like it flows through me so easily. And then sometimes things happen and I could just feel it just like, it just stops. And maybe like anger comes up, or, you know, grief, or like I'm in a situation where, you know, I'm being abused and I'm like, okay, hold on a second. How do I love myself? You know, I need to protect myself, maybe remove myself from a situation. So it's like love is me, but it's also other people, it's other things, it's everything. And so it's like learning to dance with everybody and everything, and each day is so different.
What about your relationship with your mom and how that felt?
Sorry. It's very, very challenging. I can feel moments of, and like recall times that she loved me, and I know she did her best, but like it feels so empty, like she hated me, and I didn't understand why. I still don't. Does she really hate me? Probably not. But I know that there's things that she struggles with that she has not healed from, and so she continues this pattern, and it pushes me away, you know? It makes me feel unloved as from woman to woman, that I've had to work on, that I've had to heal myself. Very hard. Very hard. I would get jealous of her giving love to other women and friends. And I didn't understand what was so unlovable about me, that we couldn't connect and be best friends.
How'd you cope with that growing up in your childhood?
Drugs, alcohol.
When did you start coping with drugs and alcohol?
I was about 13, 14. We would just sneak alcohol, fill it up with water, because they started to draw lines. So we would put water in it, Or, if we were at their friend's party, we would, sneak something out of their cooler and go drink it in the bathroom, or go to the desert. And while they were drinking with their friends and distracted.
How'd it feel when you drank? When maybe it felt like filling that void? How'd that feel?
Parts of me felt like, hey, like I'm okay. I'm okay. I don't have to think about, whatever is hurting me. And then at the same time, it made it worse, because it was like that alcohol made me even more depressed. And so I would go and I would have my friends buy me alcohol, and then I would put it in my closet, and I would hide it in my clothes, and then I would drink it like every so often, just hiding it from my parents.
What's the biggest thing that you learned from your parents, good or bad?
That I am enough, that I am lovable, that I am worth it, that I can do anything that I put effort into, anything that I desire. I can work towards it, not to give up on myself.
So how'd you turn those negatives? Because those are all positives, right? So how'd you turn what you experienced as a child, or the lack of what you experienced, into that? Where was that switch where you took your history and said, hey, I'm going to use it for good?
Yeah. I just began studying like self-help books. I started to study energy. I started to study different religions, and this is over a period of like 20 years. I still consciousness, like just any and like every answer. I'm just like always searching, just trying to be like, okay, how can I be better? How can I make it better? Like I don't want any limitations. I don't want to be bitter, but if I do feel bitter, I'm not going to be hard on myself, and I'm going to work through that on my own terms, so like everything is okay. I realize when I'm hard on myself, I'm hard on, people outside of me, and I don't want to be like that.
So maybe the answer would be the way you were raised, or the lack thereof, forced you to search for those answers.
Yes.
And come to those conclusions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could you tell us about your first love and how that felt? It's whatever you associate as your first love, so it could be a person, place, thing, hobby, etc.
I have a lot. Man, there's just like a bunch of answers coming to me. So my kids, yeah.
How'd it feel?
It felt pretty amazing. Yeah. It feels like such a huge blessing to be a mom. I have 2 boys. So that first time becoming a mom, I was just like, wow, like I'm going to do so much better. I'm going to do so much better. And of course I did do some of the things that my parents did that I didn't like, but I was like, okay, wait a minute. Okay, how can I be better? So I would just like read books.
What about your first loss or heartbreak? Same thing, whatever you associate as your first loss or heartbreak, and how that felt.
So my little brother, he passed away when he was 16. those are like kind of the things that you hear like happen outside of you and to other families and friends. He was only like 2 years younger than me, and we were pretty close. And we played soccer together. We hung out with the same friends normally. And then he got bacterial meningitis and ended up passing away from it. The hardest part about that was when we were younger, my parents were going out on a date, and me and my brother were on the fence. We were pushing each other and playing around, and I ended up pushing him off the fence. Well, he fell off, and there was some metal on the side of the house, and it stuck him in the side, and it ruptured his spleen. So he had to be rushed to the hospital. My parents came back from their date, and he had to have it removed. And I remember that was like, it was so hard. And, you know, being a child, I didn't really understand. I think we were like 5 or 6, maybe a little bit younger. So when he got the meningitis, they said that if he had his spleen, that he would have lived. So that's like something that weighs on me, and I have to work through constantly.
What's the heaviness besides obviously the passing? What is the thought process that makes it so heavy?
That it's my fault.
How so?
Just being on the fence, playing with him, pushing him, you know, having that surgery, losing his spleen, and then just like years later that happening.
And then how do you work yourself out of that? So that thought you just had, what's your process of working through that?
I have to tell myself that I was a child. We were both kids, and we didn't really know any better. We didn't know that that was going to happen. And I have to tell myself that's not my fault. That's not easy.
Who would you say first taught you what love is and how?
My sons. They've taught me how to love myself even more, like through loving them, and they're teaching them about, you know, just reading, or, you know, not to do things that are dangerous, or to be careful. And I saw them doing some things that I was doing. They were like mirroring back to me. And so I was like, oh my gosh, okay. But there's like this free gift of forgiveness that my kids give me, and this love of like, it's okay, Mom. Like, they don't hate me. They don't, like, I can still make mistakes and they still love me, and, you know, vice versa. And so it just like carries on throughout my life in like different areas. When I am making decisions and they're not the best for me, my kids are intervening, and they're like, they can have a conversation with me, and they can be open, and it snaps my perspectives into different thinking, and it helps me see that there is a better way, and it's okay.
When you say that affects you in different ways of your life, do you mean in how you interact with other people? Or because you experienced that with them that you're like, maybe it's easier for you to kind of let that move through you?
Yeah, both of those, yeah.
what's your definition of love? So what's your definition of love, what it is today, right now, versus what it was to you maybe when you were younger? What's the contrast and what's the difference in feeling?
So when I was younger, I remember like seeking validation outside of me. Like, do you like me? Do you love me? Like, I can't wait to meet, that man in my dreams who's gonna love me, and or then we're just gonna make it work, or it was like I was always waiting for something else to happen so I could feel fulfilled and in love. Where now I'm like, okay, I know I need to love myself completely and not seek it outside of me, but know that it's within me, and it's something that I can, like, it's like a pressure valve I can just open, and it's at will, and like I can just let it flow. Like, everything is okay. And sometimes when I get overwhelmed and overstimulated, I have to remember to take that time and just like get by myself and get back into myself, where now I'm the one who's pouring out love. I'm not seeking it. I already know it's there. I already know it's in everything. It's just, okay, how can you be love right now? And sometimes I don't always get it in the manner that I would like to. And then I remind myself, like, okay, it's all right. Like, just be and do. It's now, the present moment. You can't change what happened. It is what it is. It couldn't have happened any other way. So just like roll forward with it. And that feels much more relaxing and free and expansive.
Can you describe the expansiveness when you feel, like when you have those moments, I guess?
That's a good question. Like, how do I get to that place? Or
how does the expansiveness feel? If you could describe.
It feels light. It feels happy. It feels like bliss. It feels like total and complete movement, like throughout the universe, instead of like, oh my gosh, I'm like stuck and like heavy. It's just like, wow, that feels really good. It makes my heart feel warm and smile.
What's a good day like for you?
Like, describe on how.
Just a good day, a general good day.
A good day is like, maybe I drink my coffee, I journal, I like set intentions, and I like really hear from myself first. And then I'll go out, and then like maybe I get to help somebody, I don't know, across the street, or buy something, like hugging people, meeting new people, having good connecting conversation. It doesn't necessarily have to be about positive things. As long as that person feels like they were heard by me and that I'm present. Like seeing people smile, sharing anything, everything, giving away things, helping people.
What's a bad day look like for you, and how do you get through that bad day?
A bad day to me can be an overstimulation of so many things all at once. Experiencing things over and over again that are maybe frustrating, like almost like hitting a wall, and having no solution. Not being able to help people, not being able to like connect with anyone. And I normally get through it by listening to some relaxing music, journaling either on paper or in my phone, and just getting it out of me, whatever it is, whatever emotions, feelings, thoughts, and being able to move on from that.
What's a person or an event that shaped you, good or bad? How does it feel when you reflect on it?
A person
Or event.
or event? My mind like thinks of like a million things. So like trying to pick one. So when I was 16, I made the soccer team for the United States. Yeah, and I went to Europe for about a month and traveled over there with a bunch of the people. There was a boys team and a girls team. And we traveled Europe, and we experienced what it was like to live in a different country. And we played teams for all over the world. And we had such a great time, and we won a bunch of trophies. And so that like really expanded me in of like what, now when I think about things of like, oh, I don't know if I could do that. I think about that, and I'm like, wait a minute, like you did that, like you could do that easy, you know? So I just use it as a reference. But it was like such an amazing time that I got to go to another country and like just meet people from all over the world and play soccer.
What'd you learn? Like, I know when I finally traveled, it was like, I hadn't left, other than Mexico, we're not going to count that. But when I went to Europe, one of the things that I remember thinking was like, oh shit, they're not lying to us in the history books.
Yeah.
Stuff happened over here. But beyond that, it opened my heart and my mind to how much bigger the world is.
Yes.
To how much bigger the world is in my own mind, in my own heart, and it kind of did make me grow in ways that I didn't know were possible, almost like.
Yeah.
And it was a feeling of like wonder in its own way, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, man, there's so much out there.
Yes.
And it kind of, like you said, it broadened my horizons, but it felt, just like that. It was heart opening.
Yeah.
Not just eye opening, but it was like freeing too.
Yeah.
Like it's not just this way of life; it's different ways of life.
Right. It like expands like your perspectives, and so like I like used to tell my kids and I tell everybody, I'm like, get out of here, like go explore, because it is gonna change. Like your small thinking is gonna expand, and you're gonna be like, oh yeah, that really doesn't matter. You know, I notice that in a lot of small towns where people don't get out much, and it's just like they're stuck in these boxes and these perspectives. And so when I share with them me, they are just like taken back, like, how do you even think like that? I'm like, how do you not think like that? Like, go to another country, go to like 3 or 4. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's necessary.
Yeah.
What inspires you?
Oh my gosh. Again, I got a list. But when other people thrive, and if there's anything that I can do, even if it's just to cheer them on and it's gonna help them thrive, like I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, that's rad, because like I just enjoy people, watching people celebrate or being able to celebrate somebody else, you know, especially when they go from a small, a perspective that has kept them from thriving or living the life that they want. And then in conversation, it eventually changes, and then they're just like expand, and they're just like rocking at their life. I'm just like, oh my gosh, dude, that's so rad. I love that.
What's been a humbling experience for you?
Yeah. Oh man. So one that sticks out to me was being a correctional officer for ICE, and there was degrees of security that the men and women were broken up into, and I was in high medium with, I think there was like 92 to 96 men, and I was in there by myself, and what was on TV? There was a soccer game, and the president was talking about something that had to do with passports. What was it? But it had to do with a lot of people coming in the country and going out of the country, you know, whether they were going to be freed or stay. So it was very important, and this was late at night, and there was a gentleman who was causing trouble with the TVs, and you know, those kinds of situations you got to get control over, otherwise there can be, you know, riots, and it can escalate very quickly. So there was this gentleman who thought he had the right to change channels, and it started to escalate, and so I tried calming it down. And I had been a correctional officer there probably about 2 months at that time. And so, you know, you work on building relationships with these people. At least that's what I did, you know, and treated them as such. Like, you know, it's, yeah, we're in here, but we got to build a relationship and respect and honor for each other. So I had built that with quite a few of the detainees. So it started to escalate, and I said, you know, if you continue this, I'm going to have to shut down all the TVs because we can't have this. And so he continued and continued, and here comes 3 other people, 3 other men. And so I had to shut off 4 TVs, 5 TVs. And so with the importance of that soccer game, you know, it was very important to them, and the president speaking, you know, that had a lot to do with them being in there. Shutting that off really upset them. So there was about 30 men who got up, and they started to come at me, and I thought, oh boy, okay. Well, you know, we signed a paper when you're a correctional officer, and it's, you kind of like have to sign your life away that, you know, they're not going to come rescue you, so take your uniform off or do what you can to, you know, keep the peace, but, you know, chances are we're not going to come rescue you. So all that stuff is going through my mind, and so I'm trying to calm them down. And so I was surrounded by 32 angry men of like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, why are you turning these fucking TVs off? And I was like, look, I talked to you guys. I talked to him. You know, he's causing this ruckus out here. So in building a relationship with quite a few of them, and, you know, there were some coming in and out all the time because of transfers, I thought to myself, okay, so I'm gonna have to go on my way. So they kind of started like migrating around me and following me, and I thought, wow, so this is how it fucking ends. So I just like took a deep breath. I felt adrenaline rush through me, and I'm like, okay, well, all right. And then I had about 12 of the other men come up and help me calm the situation down, and, you know, talk to those guys and tell them what was going on in a different type of lingo, I'll say. And so that took about 10 minutes, and it de-escalated, and they apologized and stuff. But that was very humbling to have that many men very angry at me for a short amount of time, it made me not fear death so much, and to understand that communication and relationship is very important.
What was your biggest takeaway from working in corrections?
They're just like us. Like, some people get caught doing stuff and they get thrown in there. Some people, it's like petty stuff. Some people, it's like, everybody has a story and everybody has perspectives. And so when you're younger, those things are so powerful on you. They start to shape you. And if you don't know how to change them, or if you're not taught how to change your perspectives, you kind of like, you're in this like ball of fire, and you just like keep building up, and you're getting in trouble here and you're getting in trouble there, and you don't understand why, and you're getting locked up for murder or drugs, or you name it. Like, if you listen to each one of them, it's like, it's just a reflection of you, just different choices. So it's about teaching them that, I had to teach myself. I had to find resources. And so for me, it's like, man, what if you had those same resources? Or what if you had those chances that I did? You wouldn't be in here. You'd be thriving.
What were some of the times that you saw humanity shine in those arenas? I think you just said one, right?
Yeah. So a few of them have gotten out, and so it's been a few years, and so they catch up with me, and I'm like, no way. And they're just like, this one guy, he was practicing cutting hair in there, and now he's a barber, and he makes all kinds of money. He has a baby. He's just like thriving, and I'm just like, dude, I'm so proud of you. Look at you. Don't stop. And so you could tell that there's been a few times where he was kind of like tempted to go back into certain situations, and he was like, oh my God, what do I do? And so through conversation and, he stays away, he was able to remember our conversations, and just like keep going, And there's like many stories like that, which I don't know, it just like makes me, that's one of the reasons why I stopped being a correctional officer, is because you're limited in what you can do and say and be. And so I told them that my last job, I was like, in Colorado, I was like, I got to get out of here, because I could do more for you guys out there than I can in here. And so some of the men and women have gotten out, or they've relapsed, and it's like they're working on themselves, and they know that there's a different way. And to have that connection with them, like exchanging smiles or high fives or like encouraging words, that makes me happy.
Are you amazed at the resiliency of the human heart, especially when you're in those places? Just how strong the human heart is, even when chained and shackled, and
Yeah.
isn't it something to see?
Yeah, it is.
I agree. There's ugly parts in
Let's
there.
talk about you now.
There's ugly parts in there. There's no question. But
Yeah.
during my stint, it was never lost on me that we're still breathing. Like, there's something in us still.
Yeah.
Even with the lifers and what we would quote unquote the worst of the worst, that even if you displayed loyalty and that's how we knew how to show love. So
Yeah.
it's still the heart fighting for that,
Right.
in its own way.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was pretty powerful.
When I think about my darkest times, I think about how the guys and the girls in there have it in their mind, and I'm thinking, if my mind was so messed up because of conditioning and shit, like, I just think how much worse it was for them, and that's where I have compassion, and like I feel sorrow, and I'm like, man, what can we do to help them? And I don't like hearing, well, F them or throw away the key, because I'm like, man, that could be you and me,
tough.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
tough because, you know, you had a traumatic childhood. You didn't decide to hurt people. I had a traumatic childhood, right? I decided to hurt people. It's like, you know, we always want these easy answers, these blanket
Yeah.
answers. This is gonna fix it, right?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that it takes everyone and everything,
Yeah.
and we just gotta try, and however that looks, you know, goes forward. But I do think it's a knowledge is one of it, but I do think it's just love. Like, we just don't know how to love, and when you're hurt and you're abused, at least for me, speaking personally, the way I thought love was to give loyalty to somebody without the compassion, to give loyalty to somebody without wanting to understand, to execute violence on somebody else on behalf of somebody I loved. And
Yeah.
it's changing that to telling somebody, like, we know you got it in you.
Yeah.
You know, like, we know you want to love,
Yeah.
but it's using the same heart for good, though.
Yeah.
I think that's my 2 cents.
So I did actually hurt people with what I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you didn't end up in jail.
I didn't get caught.
You're on the other side. You're on the other side. Okay. That's why you're like, I know. That's why you're one of the cool. You're like, okay. You know,
Yeah.
you were able to put yourself in our shoes.
Yeah.
Because you were able to see that the flip could have been so easy. So,
Yeah.
who did you hurt besides yourself?
Well, I got involved in gangs when I was in junior high, and so, you know, we first hurt each other by initiation of the gang that we had created, and then we didn't allow anybody to disrespect us or hurt us. If, you know, one or a couple, it was a big group of us, you know. Eventually I got expelled for gang activity in high school. And so that's one of the ways
Well, who'd you hurt? How'd you hurt?
Okay, so it was one of our friends, and we ended up beating her up. You know, it was an initiation in our gang. Man, we thought we were doing so good to each other too. You know, so like we were being loyal to each other, that we were gonna, for some reason our perspective was, if we did that and you didn't tell, that you were automatically within the respects of us. And then they did it to me as well, but you know, during those fights, you fight back. So that's one example. Definitely not a.
So yeah, it's the same thing, right? Like, so it is, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Where it's, you know, now that we're older and we can look back and I'd see it through a different lens and for what it was, and appreciate it for what it is at this point. It's just like crying out for love.
Yeah.
That shit does feel like love.
It does.
In that moment, like, when you have other human beings pat you on the back and hug you and shake your hand after literally hurting somebody.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I never felt this.
Right.
Like, and, you know, especially if you're abused, so now the connection is you're making all types of connections.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's hard to get out of that.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to step back and be like, this isn't love, right? Or even if we do know, because even in prison, we all know the homies are like, hey, the homies aren't sending us money to buy stuff at the store, you know?
Yeah.
It's like your sister, your mom, even the one who abused you, right?
Yeah.
But it's not the homies who say they love you. And it was the way I always saw it was, well, that's not what the homies were for anyways. Like, they're good for doing bad stuff.
Yeah.
And this is how they'll show, like, their love.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat.
Right.
And it's twisted and fucked in its own right, but
right.
It's us just trying, like.
Yeah.
There are some guys who really like it, though.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I mean? Everybody ain't trying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But man, it takes a miracle to get out of that when you're in it. Like,
it does.
To figure out, like, I deserve better.
Yeah.
And to not know what the real thing, but to know that ain't it.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you know, I may not know what love is, but I know this isn't it right here.
Yeah.
And then you go on that journey of searching, but there's moments of either small moments or big moments where that light switch turns and you're like, hey, this isn't love for me. This isn't what I want. I want the real thing.
Yeah.
Did you have one of those? Or increments of it where you like small realization where you're like, maybe this isn't.
Very, very little. It wasn't, Man, that's a tough one. I can remember like certain little moments, or like I would watch a movie and it would be so romantic and I would be like, oh wow, maybe that's what love is, you know? And so it's almost like then I maybe was like chasing that in a way, like for the validation. With my grandma, I always had love with my grandparents. So I knew that was different, but among my peers and stuff, like, it's just, it's so strange. It's like so surreal to me now because I had to like go through so much to break those patterns. Yeah. My kids ultimately are the ones who have like saved me, because I thought, oh, I don't want my kids to do that. When I have kids, I don't want that to happen. And so like I'm still learning to be a mom, and I don't think that you ever have all the right answers, or you just arrive at some, moment you're just like, oh, okay, like fall in love with the process. And even if you do things that may hurt people or may not, like, you gotta love that as much as you love the other side of it, because you wouldn't know the difference. And that's where I lose the act of judgment as well towards people, because I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that's familiar. Like, I know that. And hey, there's a way out. Some people don't want to hear it. And
what's the way out?
Like, ultimately, I think it's self-love, like learning how to love yourself in different ways. Having like a toolbox that you can just like reach into, like, hey, this helped me before, but this tool isn't helping me anymore, me journaling. What else can I do? Who else is being an example that, inspires me, or that I really want to be like? Not that I have to do it like them, but like, what idea can I get from them and make it your own?
What made you, or what in your life made your path go from, the gang activities, because those are like, you know what I mean, it can go fast.
Right.
Made it go to a correctional or like law enforcement almost, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How did we? And there's actually a lot. It's not uncommon. If you grow up in it's usually how it goes. But,
yeah.
What were those like? From that to making a decision where you want to be on this side of it, like, I would assume, and try and help,
Yeah. I feel like I have always been able to connect to people, whether whether we connect like mentally, but like I'm just like, man, I understand. Like because I've been through so much and like I've hurt so deep, it's like I can look at somebody, hear their story, or maybe not even hear their story and just look at what they're doing and immediately have compassion. And I always think, man, there's a better way. There's a solution. And because I was on that side and I got so much rejection, and then even during my transition, I got rejection too, because it's like people want to see you for the old you, but that's not who you are. But it's almost like it can mess with your head and prevent you from going forward if you think, oh yeah, they're right, I'm just gonna give up. And so you just like, fuck it. But it's like, no, you gotta like, even if it's blocking, deleting people, moving to another country, state, whatever, getting away from that. And maybe until you have the strength to hear that and not be sucked into it or not. But it's like continually building the life that you desire.
And people who see you for who you really are.
Yeah.
A few actions here and there.
Yeah.
So the next question, if you can go on your mind and think, this life event can be mental, physical, or spiritual. Can you tell us about a time in your life that you can relate to the word war?
I feel like that's been my life, you know, not so much anymore, but just like a war in my head. Like there's people who are in prison and locked up, but a lot of us are locked up in our minds here outside, and so we're not free. Yeah, we're free, but we're not free. You know, when I think of war and like the things that people are fighting for and suffering, and you know, I think about the things that I've been through, and like in my head, what had to die? Like me trying to find outside validation, that had to die. That was the war that I had to fight in my head. You know, because it's like, well, you know, you see this inspirational saying of like, oh, you know, you're worth it. You know, you're lovable. And my first thought was like, man, fuck you. Like, what the fuck do you know? You haven't lived my life. You don't know. So then I'm like, I want to believe that. So then it's like I have to mentally fight this game of that's going to be my new belief. And so I have to say that to myself, even though, okay, so I go a few days and like, oh yeah, I feel pretty good. But then something triggers that emotion of like, nah, see, I told you weren't worth it. And so then here it comes that pain, those memories. And then it's just like, there's this fight of like, I don't want to feel like this. I want to feel like I'm worthy again. And so that's part of what I can relate to.
How do you win that war? How do you fight that war?
Looking at other people as an example is one. That's what helped me. I shut out certain TV and music. I was very careful. Like I'm still pretty careful in the music I listen to. The people that I'm around. Connecting with everything, you know, sometimes going out and just standing in the grass, or like I was just doing a video earlier. Like I love plants. Like I feel so connected and there's so much life. And so I hug my plants and I kiss them and I sing to them. And to somebody looking at that, they may be like, oh my God, dude, you're freaking crazy. But for me, I'm like, I'm connecting. You know, I'm everything and I'm nothing all at the same time. And, you know, that's another tool. Or maybe not thinking of myself for a moment and thinking, what can I give to somebody who's crossed my mind or has crossed my path?
I've hugged trees before. It's not as uncommon as you think. It's not. You said something profound, you know, when you said that there's people who are actually physically locked up and they're more free than us out here, the war in our minds and
Yeah.
the cages we make for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's funny, when I was in prison, I felt pretty free. People don't, like,
Yeah.
getting by in regular life
Yeah.
is hard.
Yeah.
You know, I never had a healthy respect for that. Being a quote unquote criminal, I never had a, you know, I was like, look at these guys going to work, you know, type attitude.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'll just go get it quick, right?
Yeah.
And there isn't that consistent grind and
Yeah.
the monotony, the struggle of finding the joy and the monotony of it all, and and I didn't have that appreciation until, you know, I hit rock bottom, and I was like, fuck, this shit is hard.
Yeah.
Like, just going to work every day
Yeah.
and paying bills and being on time, and then life happening all at once
Yeah.
versus where I'm in the streets. I don't care about anyone. I'm just
Right.
surviving.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's kind of that way in prison. Like, I don't have any bills.
Yeah.
If I want to worry about my, you know, my say if I had homies who had kids, how much can you worry? You're in a 12 by 6 cell. Like,
Yeah.
you have to learn the art of letting go. You know?
Yeah.
Like, because you can't you'll drive yourself crazy.
Yeah.
Literally,
Oh, yeah.
Because we can't get out the walls.
Right.
So it's funny out here, it's because we have the freedom of movement, but yet how much can we really do?
Right. Yeah.
What is within my grasp? What is within my immediate power to affect something or change something? And it's learning what is and what isn't. 99.9% isn't.
Yeah.
But man, that's tough. Like, oh, what could I have done today? Versus in prison, I did feel, ironically, a sense of freedom.
Yeah.
In its own way.
Yeah.
Like, all I got to do is survive. This is autopilot.
Right.
You know, there's a stress factor. Don't get me wrong. There's tension. There's violence.
Yeah.
Most of us grew up in violence.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's second nature.
Mm-hmm.
You know, getting out here and living in life where you can't handle issues violently.
Yeah. Some you want to.
You know, some you want to,
Mhm.
right? But you can, and you have to, like, it's a different letting go.
Yeah.
And if you don't, man, I think that's hard to learn for ex-cons. Like,
Yeah.
that transition is extremely difficult.
It
I
is.
liken it to when guys talk about PTSD and
Yes.
and coming back from war, and like, it's
Yeah.
tough because you've been trained to snap
Yes.
at a dime just like that,
Yeah.
out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And that was for me the different type of jail. Like, you know, it was funny that I felt free in prison, but when I got out, I had the prison mentality, so I was more caged as a free quote
Yeah.
unquote person versus when I was in there, because I kind of fit in.
Yeah. Exactly.
And now it's being mentally free
Yeah.
and taking down those, you know, I had a spiritual moment. That's how I got free. You know what I mean? But that shit is tough. So,
Yeah.
And I don't think people give themselves enough credit consciously for just living life and doing life.
Yeah.
And doing the best they can, because it is not easy
Right.
in any way, I don't think. But it's definitely rewarding.
It is. You know these rules that people have of like, okay, when you're 18, you're out of the house. Not all tribes are not like that. Like cultures, it depends on the cultures. Like I like where
They build you up on how to, like,
yeah, it's a community thing. You know, you got to be a part of a tribe, and like that way you can go to the elders or whoever and be like, man, I'm fucking struggling, and they can just like sit and listen to you and talk some wisdom into you, and you don't have to go rob a bank because you know you don't have money or food. It's like, hey, you know, we got some food here. My grandma, her family was like that. It was like, you know, sometimes brothers and sisters live together, and like kids and grandkids, it's like, what's the big deal? Why does everything have to be so separate? Yeah, I think some of the funniest moments as a correctional officer is when some of the guys would try to steal cornbread. They're fucking hungry. They roll it up in their pants, and I'm like, what is that? And they'd run, and the cornbread would fall out, and I'm like, oh, God. Yeah. So you just kind of got to balance. Are you going to put this in there?
Yeah.
Okay, I better
Why
stop.
wouldn't
I better stop.
That shit happens.
That's true. It does, yeah.
I mean,
making weapons out of fucking
that's
toothbrushes.
Amazing, right? I still don't know to this day how the steel smiths would make the weapons out of the steel, because I would see the knives.
Yeah.
Like, how the fuck did they make this?
Yeah.
And they'd be this big, like they'd kill you, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, how did they like sharpen this down?
Yes.
The ingenuity of human beings is out of this world.
Creative.
Creative.
I was doing a bunk search, and this is at night, and I'm going through, and I see one of the detainees up there, and he's sitting there doing this. I was like, wait, what are you doing? I know you got something up there. He's like, nothing. I'm like, give it to me.
Yeah.
And, I was on a good relationship with him, so he's like, all right, here you go, Armstrong. And I look at it. He fucking filed this toothbrush, those little toothbrushes, into a little shank, and I just looked at him. I'm like, nah, we are not doing this. And he was like, okay, you can take it. So I'm off for 3 days, and I come back, and he's in solitary confinement. I was like, I know his ass made another one of those. Yeah. So I went over there, and I looked at his papers, and I'm like, what are you doing in here? He's just like, points at it, and it says that he had made a shank out of the toothbrush. And I'm just like, oh, didn't I take that from you? I made another one. Oh, my God, dude.
You've never seen the ones they made out of steel?
No.
Yeah. So in the maximum security yards, in the county jail too, like they're full on steel, and like massive, like little miniature
like
swords.
Machetes?
No,
Damn.
Like 4 or 5 inches.
Yeah.
Massive, right? But it's thick. It's like it's gonna break, either pierce your skin or break your fucking bone.
Yeah.
I never knew how they did it. I wasn't a steelsmith in there. That wasn't my trade.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I was even that, like the lighters, all that other shit. Like, it's just people. What you were doing on the streets.
Yeah.
It's like it's extended, like you're still doing in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like the lesson was never learned. It's like it tripped me out that we're in there for violence. We continue the violence.
Yeah.
The dope boys are in there for dope.
Mm-hmm.
They're in there selling dope.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So it was just like, I was like, man, this is.
There's some creative ways they get that dope in there.
It's creative. It's just like the way the brain works never ceases to amaze me.
Yeah. Right. There's always a way. Always.
So for this enough prison talk. Enough prison stories. So for this next question, it's the same type of question. If you can go in your mind and think, this life event could be mental, physical, or spiritual, but a time in your life that you can relate to the word peace.
So I was homeless in a way, living out of my car. I had been through divorce. I had a full-time job. I was trying to make all my payments and couldn't afford to live in a home. And I have kids, and so I'm like, I can do this. And I got so sick of my own shit of like why I kept having these reoccurring abusive relationships, and I'm like, I'm not coming out of my fucking car until I know like what's wrong with me and like what's going on and have some answers. So I would go to the library. I would go to the public library. I would go to Barnes and Noble. I would look up videos, and it was always like, it was self-help. It was many different religions. I studied, 10 or 15 different religions, all kinds of spirituality. And the main thing that everybody I saw was trying to get out of was like this, finding this sense of love and to be connected to everything and not ever be alone. And so I remember, like, there was many nights I just like cried myself to sleep because I was like, man, I'm a single mom. I'm living in my fucking car. All I want to do is be a good mom. I want to make it. I want to pay my bills. I don't want to end up in abusive relationships again. What do I fucking do? And so this was probably about the 4th or 5th month of me doing that. And it was at night. I was in Colorado, and I just got outside my car, and I was just sitting on the top of my car, and I'm just like looking out in space and seeing all the stars, and all of a sudden it was just like this peace that was so tremendous washed over me. It's like, you're all these books that you read are just people's stories. Think of Jesus. That was a story. That was an example. Think of Buddha. Think of, all the religions and spirituality. And then I would go to the library, and there was like tons of books. Like, that was everybody's story. But like, everybody's really searching for that energetic feel of love. And sometimes you don't know how to get it, but it's there. It is something that you've felt before. And it's just about remembering that. And I just like washed myself of all of having to be and do anything. I became absolutely nothing, and I realized I was absolutely everything. And I can recall that feeling that I had, and sometimes I still do because I need that, because sometimes I get overstimulated, or I don't really watch TV. I try to be very connected to myself, but sometimes I go into crowds, and that's when I feel a lot. So I kind of have to like, okay, I'm going to walk away from this crowd. I need to have my alone time because I'm like feeling everybody and everything. And so it's still the process of that, but I know that I felt it and I can't deny it, and I can recall on it.
What do you do to not forget?
I remember where I was, and I remember where I'm at, and I know that if it ever did happen again for some unforeseen circumstances, I could survive, and I don't want that. I want more. I want better. I want to always be a better mom. I want to always be a better person, a better lover to the world and to things and to wherever I'm at. And so I do recall that quite a bit, at least once a week.
What about the feeling of peace that you had when, I would assume that's a powerful moment, right?
Yeah.
That feeling it's outside of words in of itself.
Yeah.
But to know that feeling exists, and that it's the truth.
Yeah.
How do you connect to that?
I recall that feeling that night, and I think about what I thought about that night, what came to me, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I can breathe a little bit better now. But I have to get alone, and away from noise, or at least put headphones on if I can't get away from the noise, and put like some type of music that connects myself with myself. And then it's like, oh, okay, I remember that. I can breathe, it's okay. I don't need to worry about this or that. I can only be and do what I am right now.
How has that helped your perspective overall? That moment of that peace, and then but coupled with that struggle, like right beforehand, or those months beforehand, how does that help your overall perspective now and just moving forward?
Things aren't a big deal. Like, I can say yes and I can say no, and I can protect myself, and it's okay. Like, I can say no, and even if somebody gets upset, like, I can still be like, hey, you know what, like, I'm not upset that you're upset, but that's something that you need to work through. I need to honor myself. It's so much easier now, and it's easier like when I hear people's stresses or they come at me with questions of like, how come you're doing that? Why aren't you doing that? You know, and I see the concern and worry. I'm just like everything is okay, really. But like, how can you think like that? And I'm like, well, you know, and if I try to explain, sometimes they can't comprehend it. Some people can. But there's only like, I know there's only so much I can do, and I'm covered. I'm covered by love no matter what. No matter if I'm sleeping in my car or on the street, like I'm covered. Like everything and everybody loves me. And that's the way I truly believe, because even if somebody's angry with me, even if somebody tries to physically harm me, even if somebody says they don't like me, innately, we all, once we're out of here, I think that we're all connected. Like, and it's just like, maybe we can look back and be like, laugh at each other, like, remember that time you slapped me? You got pissed.
Isn't that thought a little bit scary that, you know, I have that thought, the same thought too, and I think, you know, luckily I have a support system, right, of believers. But I say, you know, I have big dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think they're gonna happen 100%? I'm in my dream right now.
Yeah.
Like the dream.
Exactly.
But how I'm at peace, and it scares me, is because it's the same thing. Like if I have love, I say the love of God.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm gonna be good.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the best way to think, but it feels like that's right. It's what's honest to me. Like,
yeah.
And it's scary, and I don't like saying it sometimes because it's like, damn, if I was on the corner, and really what I'm saying, if I'm on the corner and I have the same feeling I have now,
mm-hmm.
it's good.
Yeah.
It's scary and empowering at the same time.
It is, yeah.
Because to me, that is success.
Mm-hmm.
Like the success is here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not waiting for it. I'm living it.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful place to be, and things are going to be okay. And it is that there is that scary factor. Like, damn, did I just say that if I'm on a street corner, it's good? What if I fucking end up on a street corner?
I know, right? I renege.
Right?
Yeah.
That's why it's a scary thing to say, but that's where, you know, what you're saying is that where that feeling, or I'm saying is the feeling I have now, like I've waited my whole life to feel like this.
Yeah.
I'd rather continue to feel like this,
yeah.
enjoy in the presence of the love of God and move forward in life,
mm-hmm.
than get to the top and feel empty like I did at one point in my life.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just weird, you know, to say that, but it's then just having the faith of like, it will work out.
Yeah.
That the universe does work in my favor.
Yeah.
That I just got to do the smallest things.
Yes.
I don't got to do the big things.
Right.
I just got to do these little things, right?
Yeah.
And they may look big, but they're not. They're just little, like this nothing, right?
Yeah.
And you just do that, and things do work out.
Mm-hmm.
But it is scary every time I say that, because you said it, even like, because it's always one of the fears I had when I was coming over my depression and alcoholism and all that, right?
Yeah.
Was I always saw myself on a street corner, and it terrified me.
Yeah.
And I would tell Ralph, I'd be, bro, like, I can't get out my head, like.
Yeah.
And then he was like, bro, I've seen, he looked at me, he was like, yeah, I thought the same thing. You know, he was like, yeah, I thought I'd be on the street and shit, I could be happy too. I was like, God.
I'm normal.
You know, like, this guy has 2 gold medals. You know
I know,
mean?
yeah.
So I was like, okay. Oh, okay, it's not like a bad omen, or, you know.
Right.
It's like, it's just a peace that you
yeah.
have. And that peace is kind of what we're saying, is that it's priceless.
Yeah.
And that we that peace and to carry that peace wherever we go.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's scary and beautiful at the same time. And, you know, even when I say it, like, it blows my mind. So it makes me work a little bit harder.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that it's like when you're not used to using your energy as being expansive and love, and it feels so good and it feels so freeing, it's like there's a part of you that's still constricted in there, you know, and it's like, oh, wait a second, but like, wait a minute, it feels so good to be that. And so it's like you're working through a process of like constriction of, so growing up, I was raised Catholic, and then I got saved, and then, you know, studying like energy and feng shui, and then I was like reading about the universe, and I realized it was like all the same things that people were talking about. It was just like different words, but people were fighting over the words. Like, why did you say universe? Like, you should have said God. Or why did you say energy? You should have said universe. And it's like, wait a minute, like everybody's just using these different words to describe the exact same freeing, yes, creator, like what do you want to call it? Some people, I don't know. But I totally get what you're saying, and it like makes sense, and I think that's the process, and the fear shrinks, and it shrinks, and it shrinks, and we become more expansive. And yes, we can grow our fear, and we feel more constricted, especially if like we're triggered by something, or like we're in a situation where like, hold on a second, like I don't like the way this feels. I don't know where I was going with that, Jose. I agree with you.
Okay. So the next question is if you can tell us about a truly difficult time in your life. I just got triggered. Let me get to my breath. You know, just that visual. That you don't know how heavy that homelessness visual was for me during when I was coming out of that depression. It was so predominant.
Wow.
And it terrified me, and I've just used it, you know, to share. Right now, I've used it for me to be able to see how I've computed it.
Yeah.
That this was a very real reality for me.
Yeah.
Not just being, like, what odds do you want to put against me being a child of poor immigrants, a criminal, and then an addict, and then, like, this is what life had for me, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny. Most people would be like, Jose, this is a very real reality for you.
Yeah.
Right? Or they were like, yeah, more than likely, this is what's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
You're going to end up on the street.
Yeah.
Know? And I've been told that before.
Yeah.
It's not anything I haven't, like, I've heard it too. And I was like, wow, this shit is real.
Yeah.
This exists out there in the plane of possibilities, and it's a likely one given if you look at me on paper, right?
Yeah. We burn those.
And the way I see it now, like, it did motivate me. I was like, fuck, this is like my back's against the wall. Like, this is reality. But I was like, people will always say, yeah, this is a very real, like, this is so possible for you, like, given your jacket. Nobody ever says the other. Why isn't the opposite true for me then?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's when my heart opened. I was like, you know what? And that's when I was like, if this shit is real, this possibility right here that everyone will agree with me on, like, yeah, you know what? This is a very real possibility for you, Jose.
Yeah.
Why can't the other end of the spectrum be just as real?
Exactly.
We're at the top. We are happy.
Right.
Where we're free from addiction.
Yeah.
Where we're living life. Where we have a home and a family. Why can't you say, Jose, this is so possible for you, right?
Yeah.
And that's the side I gravitate towards to now. And it was like that realization, like, fuck, if this shit is real.
Right.
that means the other end's got to be fucking beautiful. And
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
I was like, hey, that's where.
Right?
And I acknowledge it. I acknowledge it. I'm like, that exists. It's there.
Yeah.
But I'm going this way.
Yeah.
And that's how I make it easier on me, because that's just been it's always been a heavy image. You know? So the other end of that is also possible, just as possible. And at this point, I feel more so. I just had to say that to work through that right now.
Yeah, do it.
So,
it's just like choices, right? And like we could buy people's perspectives on us. And the same thing with me. Like I've already been, like I've tried to commit suicide so many times that I'm like, fuck. And like I've been in so much trouble that I'm like, wait a minute. If I can get in a lot of trouble, I can do the opposite, you know what I mean? And so that's what I see in everybody. And when they don't choose it, I'm like, fuck, like what is going on with you? Like, why are you choosing that? This is what you're creating. Like I just went through a situation like that with somebody, and I'm just like, for months, I'm like, what are you doing? Like you're creating this. But they didn't listen to me, and they didn't listen to me. And it like grew into this like ball of like crazy fire. And I'm just like, oh my God, dude, like what is happening? Like, come on, we can go the other way.
Go the other way.
A choice. Like you and I are the same.
Yeah.
We're just making different choices. That's it.
Yeah. I think you get, I don't know what it takes to get someone to take their free will.
Yeah.
Be like, hey, it's my decision. That's tough.
Yeah.
So for the next question, okay, thank you for listening. For the next question,
you're welcome.
If you could tell us about a truly difficult time in your life, how that felt, and how you persevered. So like the hardest things, or one of the hardest things, and how you worked through it.
Getting divorced. I told myself I wasn't going to be embarrassed about my life, and things that I had to, that I've had to work through, because I'm not the only one. And I find myself sometimes when I'm about to say something like, oh, you should be embarrassed. So things that I've been married several times, and was not in my cards that I thought when I was little. I wanted to get married one time, I wanted to have kids, and that was it, like happily ever after. But there was parts, when you get two injured people together, and there's no growth, or one side wants to grow and heal and the other side is just like, I'm not the problem, the conflict, everybody's hurts like come out, So they came out in dangerous ways, and so I was like getting in these relationships that were extremely abusive, and I want to say I'm not blaming them, because we as hurt people really hurt other people if we're not working and finding solutions for ourselves. So that has been really hard for me, because I'm like, I was falling in love deeply, and I'm just like, okay, this is it. And then it just didn't work out. But I'm like, wait a minute, there's a solution for this. There's a problem. There's got to be a solution. So it's happened several times, and each time I was like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like, why can't I get this right? And and then I have two sons. And I'm like, how do I be a good example to them? How do I show them that, marriage is something that can last and be healthy? And so I just like self-worth, because each time like I wanted to end my life, because I'm like, this is so embarrassing. I don't understand why this is happening. What am I doing? What are they doing? What can we do? And so it has been very, God dang. My friends would tell me, Renee, you just love too quickly. You just need to take it slow. And I thought, get out of here. You know what? I know what I'm doing. I know, I love, and they were right. And having them like continually be by my side and not shun me or like push me away, because again, I was getting into a situation and that was unhealthy for both of us in the relationship. And so I was like, okay, I'm just gotta make myself better again, and it would happen again. I gotta make myself better again. So it's like just continue. It's like a continual process of like making myself better, loving myself more, which enables me to love everybody else more and understand everybody else more.
Do you think that maybe maybe your friends are right?
Yeah, they were.
I'm a lover myself. Right? It's like you gotta be picky on who you.
Yeah. Right? I wasn't picky.
There's nothing wrong with being a lover.
Yeah.
Not at all. It's just maybe those people need to be loved, right?
Yeah.
But now being older, it's like, is this person going to be receptive to what I'm giving?
Yeah.
Like, I want to be appreciated for what I'm going to give.
Right. And you already know that you're going to give the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it all depends what you're searching for too, right? Like, hey,
right.
Maybe you just want a good time for okay, but then but then as humans, it's hard to leave it at that.
Yeah.
And it just goes on, but
yeah.
I don't think anyone should ever apologize for loving. It's like the world needs lovers.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
I went to counseling too, and they were like, "You're choosing men like your dad." I'm like, "They don't look like my dad." They're like, "No, that's not what we mean." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" "Well, you're just like used to abuse." I'm like, "What do you mean? I like it?" Yeah, like it's familiar to you. And I was like so offended by that, like, because I'm like, I don't like it. Like it's so hurtful. And they're like, "No, you think that by you loving them, you can fix them." And that's when I was like, oh my God. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Did you think you could fix them, or did you just think that was love?
Probably both. I was, when they would like put me down or they were insecure and didn't want me going anywhere or doing anything, I would be like, oh, I'm just going to love them out of this. I'm going to be nicer, and I'm going to, like, it almost enabled them to be even more and more abusive. But I didn't realize that at the time. I just thought, well, I was taught that if you're loving and kind and more peaceful and you give them the other cheek, that everything would be okay, and just pray for them. Well, no, that's just a tiny part of it. Yeah.
I think it's you gotta love yourself too, right? You talked about that.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I love you, but I love myself too.
Yeah, and it's not selfish.
So that's a dance. That's right?
That is, yeah.
But how do you? When I was younger, like my substitute for love, like I didn't give a fuck. It's just I'm gonna take what's there, right?
Yeah.
There's no like loving myself. What does that even mean?
Right? Yeah.
We don't even have a conscious concept of what what that means, and what the counselor's telling you, or what somebody would have told me. It's like, like right now it makes sense.
Yeah.
But in the moment, it's like we're just in it.
Yeah.
We're just in it, and we're doing the best we can, right?
Yeah.
But then when you become aware of it, it's a whole different type of. It's more like it's kind of weird what goes on in the mind now, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I know I should be doing this, but I'm gonna do this. But I think now, when you go through a healing process, or you have those moments, or like you felt that peace, right? Like that's love. When
Yeah.
you're at that moment, like you have a contrast, like you
Yeah.
know what at least the direction, right?
Yeah.
Like, damn, this is it right here.
Yeah.
So you can kind of identify when the feeling is not even close to it.
Yeah.
Or you can, those negative feelings, especially if they're coming from somebody else at
Yes.
this point. And that's how I do it now. Like, I'm not the smartest person. I don't know all these terms psychologically, but I know how I feel.
Yeah.
And if I trust that my heart at this point is good,
Mm-hmm.
and my emotions are in tune, like,
Yeah.
I do listen to my body, and I do listen to how I'm feeling. And if something's off,
Yeah.
it's hard for me to ignore it.
Yeah.
So, is that how it is for you, or?
Yeah. So I learned, because then I started taking classes of like how to love yourself. And so it was like, take yourself out on dates. And I'm like, well, this is weird. So the first time I did it, I was just like, oh my God, what do I even do? I was by myself. I was eating by myself. And I'm like, how is this loving myself? I feel weird. And then I realized, like, okay, like I'm opening up the door for myself. How does that feel? It feels good. Nobody's like pushing me through the door or being like, hurry the fuck up. Or what do you want to eat? You know, it's like, oh, I'm going to take my time. Like, it feels good. Or like take yourself for walks. And so I would go for walks, and it's like, how do you feel? Like, how do you want to feel when you have the man of your dreams next to you? Is he pushing you? Is he calling you names? Like, what is he saying to you? So I would go through these scenarios and I would practice in my head. I gotta tell you, like, I felt like I'm like, if anybody was in my head right now and like what I was doing, they'd be like, what the fuck? But I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna keep practicing it because I'm so sick of the other stuff. And so now I don't allow my logical mind to take over, because logically, if somebody says something to me and I'm like, oh, that doesn't feel good. Like the other day, somebody was like, some guy was like, oh, what's up, bitch? And I'm just like, that doesn't feel good. But then my logical mind's like, okay, well, maybe what if they were playing? Like, just laugh it off. Or, you know, what if they were abused and that's how they love? I'm like, oh, okay.
It's like
So that's...
You're honoring, learning how to trust yourself.
Yes. And I'm like, wait a minute. My first initial thing was like, I don't like the way this feels. So I either stay away from him, or I say something to him, or I deal with it in a manner where he is not in my personal space. And I'm like, oh, this is like a little bit more of like self-love. This feels pretty fucking good.
Yeah, I feel like that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And my boys, they do things for me. Like sometimes they won't even let me carry groceries. And I'm like, I got it. I work out. It's not about you working out, Mom. Just go upstairs. We got it. And I'm like, okay, fine. But then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. That's them like genuinely like wanting to do things for me because
Like
they love me.
It too, right? Yeah.
Receiving,
Yeah.
not pushing away the love and kindness that comes at me. That was something to work through. Yeah.
What's the happiest moment in your life?
Having my sons. Yeah. Yeah.
What keeps you up at night?
Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing enough, being enough, if I'm still making the right choices as a human, as a mom, especially as a mom, because I'm a single mom, and it is challenging because people will try to tell me how to raise my kids or what to do or what to say. But inside of me, I'm like, that doesn't feel right. And so I often think, okay, did I say the right thing to my son? Or was I gentle enough there? Or should I have been Should I have been a little bit more strict when I said that? Like, just being enough and like making the right choices. So my kids, not only do my kids, they're able to thrive, but just like people who come in contact with me. I don't want people to feel constricted. I want them to feel like alive when they're around me and that they could do anything.
What keeps you going every day?
My desires. My desire to be a good mom. My desire to be a good example for my kids, to keep pushing, keep going no matter what. Living my life as an example from what I've been through. I've written a few books, and so it's really cool to like share my experience. And I love hearing other people's experiences too. And just sometimes when I feel like giving up and I'm like, oh my God, I just want to delete my Instagram. It doesn't even do shit anyways. Like I get a message that says that like I'm helping somebody and I'm like, oh my God, like that's so rad. Like it feels so good to do that. And then I'm like, okay, I'll keep doing it. But just knowing that I'm helping other people, humanity in general.
Imagine you're in the hospital today with only hours to live. What would be your regrets, if any?
That's a good one, Jose. Probably the same things that keep me up at night. You know, was I a good enough mom today? Did I give my kids enough tools and knowledge to make it through, to keep going? Did I share enough of myself? Was I vulnerable enough to show that I am strong and that it's okay to cry and have emotions and make choices that don't have the desirable outcome, but I can make choices that do have a better outcome. Was there anything else I could have done? I think that'd be it.
So you're alive and well. You're gonna make it. Do you feel that you can be at peace with what you just said, make amends, and move forward in a different way with those regrets you just said?
Yeah, it's a continual looking at myself in the mirror, in my eyes, and saying, you know, you're enough, you are lovable, it's okay, everything is okay. Let that love flow again.
You told me what your dreams were as a kid. What are your dreams now?
I want to travel. I want to do speaking engagements. I want to help people realize that they are their own powerful source, like that they can thrive, that everything that they want is within them. It's just like figuring it out, having resources, having a good support system, writing more books, doing strongman, like I'm competing in a strongman competition. Just like enjoying more, having fun more, no matter what. Sharing more, meeting more people.
You're the co-author of your life story. What's your picture perfect ending? And it's not the end. It's just what's your scenic, just picturesque?
Like I'm not on my deathbed.
Yeah,
I'm actually
no,
living my dream.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Like, it's the ending of the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm able to have a loving, healthy partnership with a man, possibly more kids. I don't care if I'm 44. I feel like I'm still healthy enough to do it. Connecting with my kids more, traveling. Seeing my friends and family, like just find an internal happiness and letting down barriers, having my own house, more vehicles, more books. I don't ever want to be satisfied. I think that to me, when I am satisfied and I'm like, okay, well, that's it, then I stop growing, and it's like, I just like want to reach for more. How can I grow more? So I'm growing, I'm helping others grow, but first by an example of being myself.
How do you think that feels?
It feels free and happy and loving and peaceful and adventurous. It feels like finally, like I've attained like the ultimate living that the plug inside of me, that I keep plugging up my love is just like there's no more plug. It's like just an overflow everywhere. It's just like constant overflow.